It's a very simple word, but a very complex process. Its internal nature is what makes it so complicated. You can't physically observe what is going on in another person's head. So, as a reading teacher, how do you assess for reading comprehension? Let's first look at each of those terms. Reading comprehension refers to a student's ability to understand the meaning of a text. Thus, student assessment for reading refers to the evaluation of an individual's ability to understand text. Some believe a reading teacher can ask simple recall questions to see if a student has understood what was read. However, true reading comprehension goes far beyond simple recall. So, with all this in mind, what are some ways to assess your students' reading skills? The first technique is to work on your students' ability to predict, which means to make an educated guess about what might happen. Effective predictions must make sense within the context of the reading. Start with making predictions before reading the text. Have students decipher the possible meanings of titles and subtitles. Examine any pictures or images and connect those to the titles. If there are graphs, have students try to explain what the graph might mean. Putting all this information together, students can guess at what might happen in the text. Furthermore, do not only use predictions before the reading. In order to assess whether students understand text, stop at certain points throughout the reading to make predictions. Have students use the knowledge already learned about the characters and story elements to predict what will happen next. Lastly, return to all predictions after the selection is finished to see who was correct. How accurate and thoughtful your students' predictions are allows you to assess reading comprehension. The second reading skill to use for assessment is identify, which means to indicate important elements of a reading. Two examples of those elements are the author's purpose, which is the reason for writing, and the themes, or the messages in the selection. Identifying the author's purpose can help you evaluate how well a student understands the overall goal of the text. Texts are written for many reasons, but those reasons are rarely explicit. If your students can identify the author's purpose, it shows a deeper understanding of the text. The same is true for the themes. One way to assess for themes is to ask your students to state what lessons can be learned from the reading. Have them use details from the story to support their answers. Identifying the author's purpose and major themes will tell you if they are processing the important story elements in the text. Visualization, the next skill to assess, means to see in one's mind all the details from the story. Helping students connect the written words with actual visible scenes is very important to understanding the content. First, help students organize the details in their minds. Reread written sections that are very descriptive. Ask students to think about the descriptive words and relate them to actual things they have seen. Since visualization occurs within one's mind, it can be difficult to assess for this skill. A simple solution is to have students create character drawings. Assign students different characters from the reading. Then they have to draw the character based on textual details. In addition, you can use comic strips to assess for visualization of scenes and events in the story. Have each student create a comic strip that details all the important events from the text. This will clearly show which students are missing any of the main concepts. The next reading skill is to connect or link information. In terms of reading material, you want students to be able to link the reading to their personal lives, other reading materials, different subject areas, and much more. Asking your students to respond to more creative questions will help them learn to make connections. For instance, imagine your class has just read the novel The Call of the Wild. Provide the following journal entries. Which character would your father be? Explain. Create a new sled dog based off of someone in your life. Give this character a new name, but the same personality and physical traits of that person. Both of these entries require students to make connections to people they know. Their responses can give you insight into how well they understood the text. The final reading skill is to evaluate, which means to make a judgment on the selection or the author's ideas. Ask students to form opinions on the text. The key is to use details from the story to explain their opinions. Opinions on fiction might have a wide range, since those stories are not true and open to interpretation. However, if the passage is nonfiction, evaluating is very important. Students need to realize some authors are biased. The evaluation stage can then include judging whether or not the author is believable. Overall, assess student evaluations for details from the text supporting the opinions. Let's review. Reading comprehension is the ability to understand the meaning of a text, and reading assessment is the evaluation of an individual's ability to understand text. Reading assessment can be a daunting task. However, there are many skills you can look for in order to evaluate a student's ability. You can have students predict, use clues from titles, pictures, or other parts of the story to make an educated guess about what might happen next. Identify, indicate important elements of a reading, like the author's purpose and themes. Visualize, use the descriptive words from the text to see the details from the reading in one's mind. Connect, relate information from the reading selection to other aspects of a student's life. And evaluate, use information from the reading to form an opinion or make a judgment on the selection or the author's ideas. All of these techniques will help you assess how your students are developing their reading comprehension.